to Season 6 of Tiger Sidelines. We have survived another year. Hello again, everybody. Alongside Gabe DeArmond and Dave Matter, I'm Bo Bayman. Thanks for joining us for Season 6 here on Tiger Sidelines. Boys, have a good summer?
Too short.
Too short,
I'm
as
happy
always?
to be back, but yes, too short.
Yeah, as always.
Happy might be overstating.
But we're back.
Okay to be back.
Yeah, that's right. The sixth season starts with a lot of hype going into the football season. Still a lot of uncertainty with maybe probation. We'll talk about that in a minute. But since camp has been underway for a couple of weeks, let's talk about what we've seen so far. And maybe the headline so far in camp has been injuries and a cloud around, like Kelly Bryant got hurt, Albert O got hurt. Those are the things you can't afford in camp.
Yeah, you know, the Bryant injury was a little over a week ago, happened in a practice, innocent little slip on the turf. It was called it a hamstring injury. He was back out there 2 days later and has looked fine physically since then. If anything, I think it's just a reminder, hey, you better have a backup ready. All the hype and talk about this guy, you know, he's one ankle away from, you know, not playing or a hamstring or whatever. I think the Albert Okwuegbunam injury is a little bit more concerning, at least throws up a bit of a red flag because he's been hurt a couple times now, and Barry Odom seemed a little frustrated by it yesterday.
And I mean, when we hear day-to-day with Albert O, we don't really know what that means after last season because he was day-to-day for the last 6 weeks of last year.
And Albert O has been watching a lot, hasn't he? I mean, he's missed a good portion of camp.
Yeah, he had initially a knee sprain, and then now it looks like a hamstring. And, you know, also I think they're going to be cautious with the guy. They don't have to, he doesn't need a ton of practice reps to prove himself. On the other hand, he's working with a new quarterback. He hasn't practiced much over the since last October, November.
Didn't do much in spring.
Didn't do much in the spring. So, you know, you can't just show up in the first game and be an All-American. You got to get some work in.
This is one of those things where Barry Odom has said, you know, if it was game week, he'd be playing.
That's Barry Odom's favorite thing to say.
Yeah, and he said that last year.
I mean, you could see a dude just like with his leg just in. If we were playing tomorrow, he would play. But since we're not, yeah, I mean, and look, I get it, but injury information, you just can't really necessarily. I mean, Demarie Crockett 2 years ago was day-to-day. He'd already had surgery.
Right.
So I understand they're not going to tell us the truth. We'll find out, I guess, Saturday, August 31st.
And that's why you have depth. I mean, not forget about the tight end, but the depth chart comes out. It's probably pretty loose and moving parts. What have you seen so far, Gabe, at practice? And we should mention you've been able to see a little bit more of practice.
Yeah, we have watched, I guess, all of practice at this point, including I know Dave and some other guys were at a scrimmage this weekend. I mean, I haven't yet seen anything where I'm like, oh, well, this jumps out. I mean, the weird thing about this camp, we could probably name 20 or 21 of the 22 starters going in. I mean, there are not a lot of position battles going on. We thought there might be one at left guard. There really isn't one.
Right.
Larry Borum's going to start there. Defensive end is interesting because Trey Williams is coming back. Trajan Jeffcoat gets hurt the first day. But other than that, there aren't many positions where we don't know who's. I mean, the most interesting thing might be the punter.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, punter or backup quarterbacks, people will still talk about in case what you mentioned, Dave. What happens if Kelly Bryant goes down? Who would step in?
Well, Taylor Powell's been number 2. He was number 2 last year. You know, Derek Dooley said after about a week and a half of practices that he's still the number 2. The only other guys competing for that are Lindsey Scott Jr., who, you know, I've never really seen anything to think, well, this staff really likes him as the number 2. And then the 2 freshmen, Connor Bazelak, who at times you watch him like, this guy's got a future in this offense. I think he's a legit SEC quarterback. But then in the scrimmage, you know, he's working with the 3s and 4s, and he's not really getting chances like you would expect a backup candidate to get. So I would think right now it's Powell, and we'll see if that changes.
And it'll be interesting, too, with Bazelak. With the new rule of 4 games, you might see him in a game early.
I expect him to play a little bit early, and it's a position where your number 2 guy isn't necessarily the guy that becomes the starter in this situation. I mean, if Kelly Bryant, knock on wood, goes down in the first 3 or 4 games, I could see a situation where they just throw Bazelak out there. Now, if you're 8 games into the season, 9 games into the season, and it happens, you go, hey, we're going to ride with Taylor Powell the last 3 or 4 because, you know, there's no point burning a red shirt for 3 games.
Let's go back to the punter situation. I mean, special teams, as we well know, has cost them some games in the past.
Yep.
And they need to make sure that gets sharpened up. Otherwise, if it costs you a game again, then you start looking around.
Yeah, the unfortunate thing was, as bad as they were on special teams last year, the punter wasn't the problem. But he's the one guy you have to replace in Corey Fatoni. So Tucker McCann has been the number one guy. He's also the kicker. Ideally, I don't think they want him to be the punter. If he's the best one, though, that's your option. Aaron Rodriguez is a freshman walk-on from Los Angeles that they seem to really like. Sean Ketting from right here in Columbia is another guy that was been in the mix, and I thought he looked pretty good on Saturday. So I think it's just may the best man win, and you kind of hope it's not McCann because you need him for kickoffs and field goals and PATs.
Does it speak to the strength of Tucker McCann's leg, however? Sort of.
That and they just don't have another one. I mean, I don't think Tucker punted in high school.
A little bit, but he was mainly a kicker.
This is the first time he's really been asked to do that. But yeah, special teams is interesting. I mean, I thought we might see in camp, like, hey, we're going to put some more starters or at least second string guys on these teams because they were so bad last year. And I'm not going to pretend I paid enough attention to who's on kickoff coverage to know that. But that's a big difference in Missouri and, say, a Georgia and Alabama is their third and fourth stringers are 4-stars that they can put out there.
Yep.
If Missouri's putting third and fourth string guys on special teams, they're putting walk-ons and guys really who probably shouldn't be out there on special teams, and that shows up.
Absolutely. Another question people will ask during camp, and we should know maybe in the next couple of weeks, what true freshmen are going to play. And again, with the 4-game rule before you can declare a red shirt, a lot of true freshmen might come through.
Yeah, the answer is essentially, well, all of them except maybe a few offensive linemen that aren't quite physically ready to play. But if you're a safety or a linebacker or a receiver, you'll get tossed out there, I think, at least that SEMO game. I mean, ideally, Wyoming, if you're up by enough, but it's the first week. But the honest question is, which ones will actually have a chance of contributing and being part of a rotation? I think there are a few. Jelani Williams is running with the second-team defense at safety. I think the running back, Anthony Watkins, has a shot. I mean, you've got 3 guys ahead of him, but injuries happen there all the time, too. So there are a few of them.
Yeah, we don't want to spoil the Twitter segment.
Yeah, that's very, very true. One other thing we should talk about when Saturdays come around, 2 big things will change. One, we'll talk about the south end zone here in a minute, but the other big one that just happened last week or this week was the alcohol sales. Beer and wine will be sold in the stands in the stadium. That's a big change. It's a big new SEC rule, and Mizzou decided, hey, we're going to take part in that. We'll see if that brings the attendance back to Missouri. I have my doubts.
I think it impacts revenue. I don't think it impacts attendance. I mean, is there really anybody who's going, well, I'm not going to the game because I can't drink? Maybe a few, but not that many. What I'm more interested in is what does it do in the second half?
Right.
Because are these people who clearly were leaving at halftime because they wanted to drink, are they still going to leave at halftime because they can drink for free now as opposed to paying $9.50 or whatever for a can of Bud Light?
I even know that there are some people that buy cheap tickets to get back in the second half because they go out at halftime as you were used to.
Yeah.
It's a whole different experience than we have.
We really just can't relate, can we?
Yeah.
No. It'll be interesting to see what kind of effect it'll have. I don't think it's going to have a drastic change in revenue because you look at other schools that have been doing this for a few years. It's just a fraction of the money that they make on game days and for the year. But if you're Missouri, it can't hurt. You need what you can get.
Absolutely. And let's talk about the south end zone. It is up and running, and it looks darn nice, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's still not done. No. I mean, like we were sitting in a little cutout of the brick wall next to the field the other day. So, like, I think nobody will say they're behind schedule, but I think they're definitely behind schedule, but it's done enough that they're in there.
And it's going to be a cool game day experience where the team walks through, and it sort of reminds me of Dallas. If you've ever been to the Cowboys, it's kind of like a bar setting, and the team walks right through. That's what they're going to have. I mean, you got to give them credit. They are trying.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to change kind of the look of the stadium for sure on that end. You've got the new scoreboard up there that's probably not big enough for some fans' taste, but whatever.
Too many ads.
Yeah, right.
Like it pays for itself, I guess. But no, I think it's gonna give that stadium a fresh look, maybe just a fresh vibe. And again, more than anything, they need the revenue, and that's what this is all about.
Will it make a difference having the offices and all that stuff there? Rather than across the street?
I mean, I don't know. They won it, so that's good.
I don't think it makes you a better team. Maybe it makes your day a little more convenient.
There's a fireplace in Barry's office. Maybe that'll help them out. They stay warm. I don't know.
Pretty cool anyway. All right, let's take a break. Our first break of season 6. When we come back, you've tweeted, we will answer. The Twitter segment is next. You're watching Tiger Sidelines on MC22. Welcome back to Tiger Sidelines, everybody. Dave Matter, Gabe DeArmond, and I'm Bo Bayman. We are at Tiger Sidelines on Twitter, and it's time to check the old tweet machine right now. And the first one comes from Dane Jenkins. We sort of touched on this in the first segment. However, he says, which true freshmen do you think play more than the 4 games this season?
You're really not going to make that determination until week 5. You're going to be throwing kids out there over the first. Well, maybe not so much, against South Carolina or West Virginia, but hopefully against Wyoming, against SEMO, maybe against Troy, and kind of figure out, hey, which of these guys can continue to help us? Like Dave said, Jelani Williams probably going to play at this point. I think Stacey Brown's got a good shot to play. I think Maurice Massey has a good shot to play at wide receiver. But take a guy like Anthony Watkins, they're going to see what he looks like in 3 or 4 games and then go, well, if he's better than Simi Bakari and he can be the number 3 back, we're going to play him. If he's not, we're not burning a red shirt for the number 4 tailback.
And the other thing that happens, Dave, obviously is injuries. If an injury pops up, then you're playing.
Right, and that's why you have to have them ready, regardless if you want to play them or not. Like Nico Hay, tight end we talked about, he's probably 4th on their depth chart, 4th or 5th. But if your front 2 guys are getting hurt and you don't know if they're going to be available every week, or maybe you don't want to use them for a SEMO game, get a guy like that ready. He looks like he can, hold his own out there.
Absolutely. That was a good question from Dane. We appreciate that. Next one says, since your last show, what event over the summer had the most newsworthy impact on this MU football team to this point? If there was no event that made an impact, is that a good thing? Let me just say this. On the field, if there's no news, it's good news in the summer. Right. Off the field, I think the biggest thing was the beer and wine.
Well, the only thing that came to mind for me was Trey Williams being reinstated, which, again, I'm not sure. It's not like you're bringing back an all-conference player, but you're bringing back a guy who started and played at a position where you need some guys who have started and played.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's just a spot that's like kind of the black hole. It's like, who's going to step up and be the guy? And I think for so long, Missouri was just accustomed to having an all-SEC or an all-Big 12 player there. Now they don't have anybody close, so maybe he can develop into that.
But we said, when we say it every year, going into the summer, you don't want any news over the summer, because if it's news, it's bad news.
You don't want transfers, don't want arrests.
And you don't want injuries. And somebody's working out and all of a sudden there's an injury. Do we regret not having Coach Cool at this point, or are we just fine without him? Also, which of the 3 of you would be willing to have a beer with me?
I'm answer the second question first, and it's one of these 2. Because it's not me.
How about this? Have a beer with Coach Cool. He's not working this year.
Right. And he's making a lot of money to not work.
Yeah.
I don't know. Would they be a lot better if Craig Kuligowski was still the D-line coach? I kind of doubt it, but maybe.
Well, Barry Odom goes out of his way to praise Brick Haley every chance he gets. He called him the best defensive line coach in America a couple days ago. So that's because it's his defense.
And he's brought in guys like, Jordan Elliott and Trajan Jeffcoat and Jatorian Hansford, so we'll see.
But to your point, Dave, now somebody's got to step up, right? If you're going to still be called D-Line Zoo.
That's a few years in the past.
No question. Yeah. But some people still hang on to that. These guys got to perform.
Well, Shane Ray and Marcus Golden aren't walking through that door. You need some other guys to step up, and they know that. Brick Haley's getting a little tired of the questions about the pass rush and if it's going to get better this year, and so are those players. So now they've got 12 chances to do it.
Absolutely. Scott says, do you guys think the sale of beer and wine will help attendance at football and other athletic events once the other sports are approved?
I just don't think there's a major effect. Either way, really.
I don't. Is it a deal breaker or not a deal breaker? But is it going to open the door for somebody to go, man, I'd like to go to the Mizzou baseball game today if only I can have a beer. Right. I can't hurt, but is it really going to help? I don't know, attendance wise.
They have attendance problems anyway. The only thing I can say is what Dave just said. It's not going to hurt, but I don't think it's a deal breaker. You don't say, I'd go in from St. Louis for this game if I could drink a beer, but
they have attendance problems for 2 reasons. One, they need to win more, And number two, like, it's better to watch a football game at your house than it is at the football game. Because you're not paying for beer. It's not 100 degrees. It's not 12 degrees.
The restroom's
You can
closed.
get up and pee anytime you want
and
to.
you can change the channel.
Right.
Yeah.
You can watch other games. If you go to a college football game, that's the only game you probably really see all day.
That's absolutely right. And that's the same problem that the NFL is having. And they're trying to figure out what they can do to the experience. It's the same with NFL and college. You're there for a long time, and there are a lot of people finding out my 4K TV is just fine.
Right.
I'm going to watch, I'm going to flip channels and see what else is on. Thank you, Scott, for that tweet. Don't forget, we're at Tiger Sidelines every single week. I know that we've had a long summer of being tweetless, I guess you could say, but every week...
Maybe you have.
Well, yeah, well, it's true. Every week we'll answer your questions right here on Tiger Sidelines. When we come back, we will talk about a big retirement in the volleyball program. That and more when we come back right here on Tiger Sidelines on MC22. Welcome back to Tiger Sidelines, everybody. Gabe, Dave, and Bo here. Thanks for joining us for the inaugural show of Season 6. And one thing we have not mentioned is the appeal going on. Mizzou, over the summer, made its appeal about the NCAA infractions against baseball, softball, and football. Now, again, it's sort of the waiting game.
Yeah, and let's get this out of the way. Like, you can tweet us and ask us every week, but nobody knows when it's going to be resolved, how it's going to be resolved. We assume at some point it will be resolved.
Yeah.
But, I mean, the point is, there's only 5 people who have any idea which way this might go, and those are the 5 people on the committee. So somebody can tell you, I feel good about it, or, oh, man, I'm nervous about it, whatever, but it really doesn't matter. Nobody knows. We're all going to find out at the same time.
And you can talk to 10 different people, and 5 will say, I feel pretty good. 5 will say,
Right.
I don't know, I'm a little nervous.
Right. The question I get most is, what's the timeline? Well,
Yep.
July 18th is when they made their appeal. The NCAA says it will spend 6 to 8 weeks, but it can always go longer.
Right.
So
it could be quicker,
September.
except it's the NCAA.
It could be September, could be October, could be November. Gosh, I wouldn't think it would go much later than that, but you just never know.
Well, and if you need proof that it's stupid to guess at these things, I mean, the NCAA puts in a rule about agents needing a college degree.
Yeah.
Everybody gets mad, and 5 days later, they just totally reverse, and nobody knows what they're going to do.
When the Missouri contingent put in its appeal, I know that they felt pretty good after what they said. There's a lot of people who have speculated nationally saying, you know, this doesn't seem like it's right. However, I mean, the thing that I would hate is we're going to be in the middle of October and something's going to come down and the football season is going to be vastly different, or it's going to be wide open.
Either way, it's really interesting how this team responds to
Right.
whatever
That's
does
right.
happen. But, you know, the thing to me, yeah, the sanctions did seem harsh and all that. But the bottom line is Missouri agreed violations happened. They agreed they were level 1 violations. And this is a possible punishment for level 1 violations. So Missouri said, yeah, we did it. They walked in the police station and said, we did it and we're guilty, but please don't put us in jail. And then the NCAA put them in jail. You know, I mean, I guess you can ask nicely, but it didn't work.
They were really banking on all the circumstances, you know, bailing them out on this one. And, you know, the NCAA doesn't necessarily work like that. In some cases they do, some they don't. But the fact that you never know is the reason I think you can't go in there with a lot of faith that it's going to work out for you.
I mean, I've got a hard time being outraged if nothing gets reversed.
Yeah.
Like, it'll be maybe frustrating to people, but again, you kind of agreed that you did what they said you did.
Fans will be, I think, outraged only because there are other people who don't admit to things and don't get punishment. I think that
So
is
clearly that's what they should have done.
absolutely, and that's kind of the precedent it would set, wouldn't it? I mean, you'd say, don't report yourself.
Well, and that's part of their argument, too. Part of their argument of the appeal is this will have a chilling effect on future NCAA cases, which that sounds good, but you can't prove that. That's a hypothetical. So I don't know how much weight that will really carry with the appeals committee.
Let's talk about a massive retirement in the volleyball program. Wayne and Susan Kreklow decide the time is right to step aside, and with their unbelievable career not only at Mizzou but at Columbia College, the timing was a little bizarre, but they wanted to set it up for sustained success, and they've done that with the new regime coming in. But that was a shocker when I first heard about it.
Yeah, it was, and again, I think timing is why it was. I mean, I don't think it would have surprised anybody if after the season, Wayne and Susan would have stepped down. But as you mentioned, they're keeping the team in the family on an interim basis. I think people kind of lose sight of that. But it was too close to the season to hire somebody new. Mm-hmm. So, they're going to keep it with the assistant coach, and then, of course, his wife is Molly Kreklo, their niece. So that it is an interesting kind of twist to it.
And that wasn't obviously an accident. I mean, it was kind of funny. When I talked to all the coaches over the summer, 2 or 3 coaches at Missouri told me I got my first coaching job when I was an assistant, and the guy above me retired. And he's never told me this, but I'm pretty sure he did it close enough to the season that the school had no choice but to give me a chance.
Yeah.
So that's not unusual.
And Molly Kreklo, by the way, going into the Mizzou Hall of Fame this year. It'll be interesting, too. The one thing that I saw with Wayne Kreklo saying, we wanted to do it when the team was going to be good to make the transition a little bit easier. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, and I think it's really admirable on his part. They don't want to just leave a mess for somebody to have to come clean up. And this program is so consistently good, and they expect to be good again this year. So you would think that transition will be pretty seamless.
And that doesn't happen with a lot of coaches. Like even really, really good coaches, they'll start to slide, and then by the time they leave, the next guy's almost got to start over, which actually then ends up making fans think the last guy was so much better, and this guy's terrible.
Absolutely. On the basketball front, we thought maybe we'd see some Mizzou men's basketball players transfer. Hasn't happened. Yeah. But Akira Levy off of the women's team, a little bit of a surprise that she left.
A little bit. Just if you follow that team, she was like the heart and soul of that group as a freshman. Everybody loved her, and she was hurt for half the year, but still played a big role. But yeah, she's off, and that team's had a lot of turnover. And they're bringing in a bunch of transfers too, so they're going to have a very different look these next 2 years.
It's going to be very interesting for Robin Pinchton, but she's got a lot of momentum going, Gabe. And let's go back to Conzo Martin's team. I know that he met with the media about a week and a half ago, just kind of giving you a summer update, and it seems like everything's full steam ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think we thought there might be a little more turnover there. It didn't happen. He's basically betting on the guys he has, and this is kind of the year that I think decides what he is at Missouri. I mean, the roster's his. The mess of 3 years ago is pretty much in the past. I mean, if you look at, year 3, that's early enough in college basketball to make significant noise, no matter how bad you used to be. So if we're at the end of the season looking at 15-15, it's going to be fair to ask long-term questions. I think most people think Missouri's going to be a lot better than that, but there are a lot of question marks on this team that I'm sure we'll talk about down the road.
And in recruiting, they've kind of lost some battles recently with some blue bloods.
Yeah, I mean, Cameron Fletcher is going to Kentucky. Caleb Love has not eliminated Missouri, but he's not coming to Missouri. Josh Christopher, it looks a little questionable, and those were the 3 guys we had for a year and a half, and now, as is always the case with Conzo Martin in recruiting, he will sign guys. Most likely, we will have no idea who they are or haven't heard of them prior to him signing them.
Yeah, it's a little harder to kind of generate outside excitement when you're bringing in guys a little bit more off the radar and you miss out on local guys. Now, those guys could all end up being great players, and people will forget that aspect of it. But when you're trying to build excitement after a season that didn't end in the tournament, it's a little hard to create that buzz.
And also, though, they have more local guys on this team than they've probably ever had.
They do.
So he has done a better job than most Missouri coaches have done there. But it's just proof, like, when Kentucky comes calling, when North Carolina comes calling, you're probably not going to win that battle.
Yeah, and the kids listen to those programs. Reed Nicco did a great schedule reveal. Yep. The schedule's kind of tough.
It's interesting. I think there's a lot of recognizable names, but I'm not sure there's any really good teams. There's a bunch of, like, they could win or could lose.
Kind of like Missouri.
Right. And I'm not sure there's any games that they have enough good games that it's probably a tournament resume if you win enough. But there are very few games that you look at and go, well, that's going to be a really good team and like a clear resume win.
Right. What's interesting is all those name teams are all away from home. So whatever it's called now, RPI or whatever the other index is, you get extra points for winning those games, and I think a lot of them, if not all of them, are winnable. It's just it appears like they're a little bit tougher. You got to clean up at home though, for sure, with that schedule.
I mean,
that's
you
a
want
tough
to talk
sell.
about attendance.
That is a tough sell.
I'm not sure why anybody's coming to watch that. The best game is what, Northern Kentucky or Wofford?
Wofford, who was actually the highest rated team of all their non-conference teams from last year, but that's not going to bring a crowd.
Right, they lost a guy to the NBA, and like that's not the same team.
Yeah, no question about it. All right, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about, by the way, volleyball, soccer starting up. We'll have all that as they begin their seasons. Right here on Season 6 of Tiger Sidelines. Want to thank everybody behind the scenes, Bill, Matt, and Brian. For Gabe DeArmond and Dave Matter, I'm Bo Bayman. Thanks for joining us for Episode 1 of Season 6 of Tiger Sidelines right here on MC22.